I would say the guitars were actually the easiest part. Um, it was the drums that were tough because the guitars, you just take any shape you want. You just buy a template online and you just cut it out to what you want, and then just do the math on where you got to put the pickups. And then it wasn't like super hard. You can just watch some YouTube tutorials.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to chat. This is about you and your journey in music, and we'll talk about the new album as well.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Killer, man. So first off, I read the band started in Idaho. Is that where you were born and raised?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Canada, Creston, BC. So I am Canadian.
Oh,
So is my two brothers. Sorry, there's three of us. Me and my two
sure.
brothers. We're all Canadian, but we were born like 10 miles from the border, and we grew up in a small little town called Port Hill, Idaho, which is literally a border town. My grandpa used to run the general store and the gas station, which was, I'm not even kidding, like, this is America, this is his gas station, and then right alongside, only like you could throw a rock to the other side of the country, I guess you could say, into Canada from his gas station. That was kind of like how we grew up, and we were just constantly going back between the border, going to Canada because all my extended family lived there. But my parents, who were also born in Canada, were able to get dual citizenship through my grandpa, who was American. And this all happened when I was like 9, 10, 11 years old. And so I
Okay.
got grandfathered in to being a dual citizen. So I live in Idaho and am an actual American citizen. But I now live in a city called Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which I've been here. I mean, I've been here most of my life, but I used to live in a smaller town called Rathdrum for most of my childhood. I went to school there and everything, but since I got married and stuff, I moved just like 10 miles in a different direction to Coeur d'Alene, which is kind of the big city here, I guess you could say.
Okay.
It's not big though. It's like 40,000 people.
Okay.
It's not a
Is it?
lot.
Yeah, that's interesting that you were like on a border town like that, especially to Canada. I grew up in San Diego. I was a border town in Mexico, so totally the other side of things, and a
Interesting.
little
Yeah.
bit more dangerous. But
It's funny too, because like the reason why my grandpa did the store and the gas station was because people would actually come down from Canada to get gas because gas was like $2 cheaper in America than it was in Canada. So they would get a lot cheaper gas, and then they could also buy certain foods like cheese has always been expensive in Canada. So they'd come get gas, get cheese, and then go back into Canada. And it was only like, 10 miles from their city. So it was a great,
going to the grocery store, so to speak, but
yeah,
you're just going across the border.
exactly. Yeah.
That's so funny. We used to go down to Mexico. There was a store like your grandfather's in Mexico though, and you didn't have to pay the sales tax, and everything was much cheaper. So you could buy beer at 18. So you could just go down there and you could get beers for cheap, and people would go down there and buy those type of things. They would ask you when you were leaving, they're like, are you coming to Mexico, or are you going back to the States? And you would just go, oh, Mexico. I'm like, okay. And then you wouldn't get the sales tax, and you'd get cheaper, and then you just walk back across the border.
Yeah, because I don't think they communicate with each other, the two borders. So they're not gonna like track that you said that you're coming into Mexico. And
No.
you know what I mean? So there's so many like weird loopholes in all of that.
Oh yeah, it's weird. It's crazy, but it's interesting to hear the other side of it, like how people would come down to buy cheese and gas because it was cheaper. We'd go, people would go across to Mexico to get beer and
Yep.
cigarettes and
And
stuff.
that the opposite did happen too, in the sense that in Canada you could buy, I think, alcohol at the time. I think it's 21 now, but you could buy alcohol, I think, at like 19. So there was a lot of people from the States coming up to
Over.
Canada to do the same thing. But I think the thing was that they started cracking down on that. And if
Mhm.
you were under the age of 21 coming through the border with alcohol, then they would basically like fine you or put you in jail. It's something crazy like that. I can't even remember, but it wasn't similar to your story with the Mexico thing.
Yeah, well, they definitely, I'm sure, cracked down hard on that, especially later when they did the ID cards. So you used to
Oh,
just be able to like walk through, and just they would ask, oh, where are you from? And you say, California, United States. And they go, oh, okay, come on through. But it's much different now than it was. This is years, 20 years
before
ago.
or 9/11 or something too. probably
Yeah, it was a bit different. But that's awesome. So you grew up there, and how did you, I mean, obviously your two brothers are in your band as well, and you come from a musical household. Three of you are musical, obviously.
yeah. My parents are very musical. My whole extended family is very musical. My grandpa on my dad's side was very musical, and my dad used to play in a band with him. So it was like my grandpa and his son. You know, they used to
Oh
do that
wow.
stuff. It was like polka, like old person type music. Not really anything that was rock and roll. But they would
Hmm.
play like dance halls and like legions and stuff in Canada, throughout like BC and Alberta and stuff.
Hmm.
So that was like kind of their thing. And then my mom's side is very musical too. My grandpa on my mom's side was a guitar player and a violin player. My grandma was a very good piano player. And so then my mom is also a piano player, and all of her siblings are musical. So all of my cousins are incredibly musical. So it's just our whole family is built around not only music but creativity. My grandma was an amazing poet, and she wrote books and stuff. So very creative, and I think all of that trickles down to our family, and we just were like brought into this incredibly musical family right off the bat. And
Hmm.
I don't people have asked me a lot of times like, when did you want to be a musician? Or it's like I never had a choice. It's like walking or breathing or drinking water. Like it's so ingrained in my being. I don't know what else there is in life other than music. So yeah, very, very musical family.
Very cool. Did you start off in piano? Like, was it?
No, I actually started off on drums because my dad's a drummer. So
Oh, cool.
I was really young. Like I don't know if you've seen our unwanted music video, but I brought in some like old VHS footage of like it's me like banging on like
Yeah, that was you. Okay, I wasn't
well
sure.
it because the thing is that there isn't a lot of footage of Parker really, because he's 6 years younger than I am, and we didn't really do as many family videos when he started to get to an age of playing drums. But in
Mhm.
1993, 1992, 1994, that was the era that I was playing drums all the time. And there's tons of footage because I'm the firstborn. So my dad filmed me way more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I started out on drums, Lincoln Logs on like pots and pans and stuff. And then, uh, you know, I got my first drum set when I was like 4. My and so I started like playing with my dad. He would just have his drum set up next to me, and we just like play with each other. And then I started doing like little talent shows, like nothing crazy, just fun little like things here and there. And people always were like, "Oh, he's so good. He's only 4 years old." Blah blah blah.
Mhm.
So everyone just assumed that I would be like the prodigy drummer, but that wasn't the case because Parker came to the mix years later and destroyed both me and Kyle. Because then Kyle started playing drums, so here we are battling who's the better drummer. And then my mom started having us go to piano lessons, which actually was with my grandma. So my
Mhm.
grandma taught me and Kyle piano for a few years, and then we ended up moving from that small town on the border to Coeur d'Alene, which is about 100 miles south. And from there, we started still doing piano lessons with various teachers up until I was like maybe 9 or 10 years old. And uh, Kyle really enjoyed piano the most. And so he kind of gravitated to that. And I was really not into, I wasn't, I love drums, but I wasn't really into drums. And I really wanted to play guitar. But my mom thought that piano was still, still the best option. And it's so funny because she was just like, you need to learn piano. You need to learn piano. And I was like, I hate piano. It's so dumb. Uh, I want to play guitar. I want to be like Van Halen, because I was listening to that kind of stuff when I was kind of that age, Van Halen and Boston, kind of those classic rock kind of bands. And I really just wanted to play guitar. And I was able to transition to kind of playing guitar by picking up bass guitar in band class, like in band, in sixth and seventh and eighth grade. They had the option to play bass guitar. And so I
Wow.
did, yeah, it's really weird. So I did that. So I got a bass guitar, and then through that, I like got good at that. And then my parents were like, "Okay, we'll just get you a guitar." So I got a guitar and I started playing, and that's kind of where that started. I stopped playing piano. I mean, I still played and everything, but I just really wanted to play guitar. And yeah, so and then at the same time, Parker is way younger than me, picking up the
Mhm.
a little bit later in life than we were. So he was, I think, 6 or 7 when he started playing drums, because before then he was very much into cars. Like he just loved cars. Like, and he's a mechanic now, so it totally makes sense.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Okay.
So he, like, not like a licensed mechanic, but he
Knows
just
how to do all that stuff.
right now he's really into tractors. So he is refurbishing. He buys like old like 1940s tractors and then refurbishes them and then resells them. It's really cool.
That is cool.
So anyways, we all just had our different things. But yeah, I gravitated to guitar, and then, we were all 3 of us started like playing together, Parker on drums, me on guitar, Kyle on keyboards. And this was like 2006, 2007 time. And we were kind of like trying to find people in our school that could sing to maybe like, make an actual band. And we couldn't really find anyone. We'd have some people over and like do some tryouts, and I ended up finding myself singing what I wanted them to sing so that they could sing it back to me. And
Oh,
after a while, I started going, why am I asking to have a singer when technically I am singing the parts
anyway.
better than the person that's coming into auditions? So that was where like my singing started to develop. And it kind of just was like I don't know. None of it really came all at once. It just kind of like formulated over time. And then I had been really good friends with, all of us had been great friends with TJ, because his family has 3 boys as well, and they're the exact same age as us. So
Oh, cool.
TJ's older brother Jake is the same age as me. TJ's the same age as Kyle, and then they have a younger son Cooper who's the same age as Parker. So we grew up together right down the road with the exact same age groups of everybody.
Mhm.
So we were just family friends for like years and years and years and years. And we brought TJ in, and that's kind of how the band kind of became the ongoing concept. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I guess that's the history. I know it's a little long.
Yeah. No, no, no. That was awesome. I just have some quick follow-up questions actually.
Yeah.
So when you were having these singers audition, what were you in high school at that time? Or
Yeah, like
yeah.
10th grade. So
Okay. So 10th grade, and so Parker was in what, middle school or not even yet?
Kyle was in middle school. Parker was still in
Yeah,
elementary.
elementary school. So he
Yeah.
was playing drums with you guys as in elementary school. And then were you writing your own songs?
Yeah, yeah. We've never been a band that covers music. I don't know a single cover song. Like I've said this on a couple other like interview type shows. Because they always ask, like, like, what song do you have to cover or this and that, and I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And I always bring up this thing that when I was in high school, we'd have like, parties or whatever, and someone would always bring a guitar, and then they'd always be like, Dawson, play a song. And I didn't know any cover songs, so then I would like play one of my own original songs. And of course, no one really gives 2 shits about about the original song I wrote. So then the one guy comes in that knows, Jack Johnson's Banana Pancakes, and all of a sudden all the girls are like, "Oh my god, you're so good."
Oh,
So
sure.
that it was so frustrating for me when I was in high school, because I couldn't like get I couldn't get any girls because I didn't know how to do cover music, and I didn't care enough to like learn cover songs. And I don't know, it's just always been a thing about all of us. We just like writing our own material. So yeah, like back then it was all like, it was very progressive music. We were really into Dream Theater when we were younger.
Huh.
So we were writing like 13, 14, 15-minute long songs, or just super progressive. Uh, and we hadn't even like discovered heavy music yet. So that was kind of where our band was at. And this is, like I said, like I was in 10th grade, maybe even 9th grade at the time, very young. Didn't really know a lot about all the different types of music out there. But I remember at a family reunion, um, my cousin showed me August Burns Red for the first time, and it was like right when Messengers had come out. So I think he showed us like the 11th Hour, some of those crazy, like classic ABR songs. And I remember just going, "Holy crap! Like this is what I want to play. This is so heavy. This is so
Mhm.
intense." And so that was when we started to shift. And then over the course of about a year, we transitioned from like the progressive side and then started to get into like the heavier side. And we didn't have a screamer yet. I didn't know how to scream. Kyle didn't know anything about vocals. And so crazy enough, Parker, if you listen to our first EP, Parker is actually the one screaming. At 10 years old, he's the one doing all the screams, and I'm the one singing. So if
Well,
anyone's
what about like the really like growly vocals?
like on that first EP, What Is My Destiny?
Yeah, like yeah, the first like the second song on the record, I think it is.
There's a song
Hold
called
on tighter, my friend, maybe.
That's all Parker. It's all
Oh,
Parker.
really? Wow.
Yeah, I think we might have had someone do like a layer. I think the producer guy that we went with, because I wasn't producing music yet, I think he might have done like a lower layer along with Parker, but Parker like 90% is it's all him, except for
That's wild. I got to go back and listen to it. That's
yeah. I mean, if
insane.
you can find like an old behind the scenes video, I think on our YouTube channel of it.
Okay, I'll have to look. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was crazy, and Parker does not know how to scream now. It was, like, right before he hit puberty, and then right as soon as he did, he completely
And
just
lost it.
lost it, and he has no desire to even consider going back to that, so, it was a very weird, like, time of our band, but then after that, Kyle started to figure out how to scream, and that's, the following year, we started recording Arrows Before Bullets, and that's kind of where that all started, so
Okay. The first EP is I think it's awesome, but it's interesting because you have like two acoustic songs in a row that are just very different than the other ones on the album.
yeah, I that was, like, because that comes back to the Dream Theater thing. We really enjoyed having a variety of stuff, and Dream Theater oftentimes would put all of those elements into a single song. The song would be, like, 12 minutes long, but you would
Uh-huh.
heavy metal, like a clean, quiet section, and then, like, a crazy solo section, and, like, all of these factors inside of one song. Well, we just wanted to do kind of that, but spread it out inside of an EP instead. So, I think from that, it was a mixture of combining, like, our love for like the metalcore style of music, but also like the variations and the different styles that a band like Dream Theater would bring into stuff, or just progressive metal bands in general. And so that was a combination of kind of just creating a whole EP built around that idea, and then just having individual songs instead.
Yeah, it was cool. It was really cool just to kind of hear the beginning and then it went into these two beautiful acoustic songs and it kind of picks up
Yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah. It's been
Uh,
so long since I've heard that album, I or EP. Should go probably back and listen to it, but I do remember there was like "Please Never Leave Me" and "What Is My Destiny" were those two songs you're talking about.
yeah.
The last song called "Goodbye So Long," which is a song that we've brought back into all of our albums in a way, because it's kind of like a classic callback song that we bring into everything.
Mhm. And the new album is like all callback, right? Like every
It
record
is.
or every track is called,
Yeah,
whatever,
in a
and
way.
again.
Yeah, in a
But it's
way.
not the same song, but it's yeah, I wanna hear about that because it's really interesting to me. But real quick before we dive into the album, I was just curious to hear about, you know, you guys get signed to Solid State, and were you must have been, like, kind of out of you were out of high school at that point, but was Parker still in high school? And what did that look like? Ho Tell me how you guys ended up getting signed.
I think I had been out of high school for 2 years, so I was 20, almost 21.
Mhm.
Kyle and TJ were just graduating that year. Parker was in, I don't know, 8th grade maybe at the
Wow.
uh, so yeah, we signed at an early age, and, um, yeah, we really didn't know what we were doing. We were just so stoked to be signed in general, but it was definitely tough on Parker because it's like, for a while we were trying to trying to tour with him, and it was just rough because he's trying to do homeschool for a while, and it just didn't work out. And I think at the end of the day, he just really wanted to grow up as a normal person in school, and so we would get tour drummers here and there to fill in for tours when he couldn't make it. But it was it was crazy. I mean, I look back on that and it's like, man, we were just kids at the time, you know?
Mhm, yeah, and then was that based on like, were you guys playing around your hometown quite often? Like, did you get a fan base? Like, how did Solid State ended up finding you?
Um, yeah, we played a lot. Like, the thing about Idaho is, especially Coeur d'Alene in this area, is there's not really any venues to play here.
Mhm.
So we transitioned over to Spokane, Washington, which is about a 40-minute drive.
Oh yeah, I have a buddy from Spokane.
Okay, yeah, it's a pretty big city. So we're not too far from like basically a major city. And so that's where all the venues are at. So we would play the local Spokane scene a lot. Like, for several years we were playing probably like one show a month or so, which might not seem like a lot, but the thing is you don't really want to
You don't
oversell.
want to keep playing there. Yeah, if you play there every week, then
Yeah,
people aren't going to come anymore, or they
yeah,
will maybe once a month.
exactly. So then we'd venture out. There's like a few different places like Tri-Cities, Oregon or Washington. I can't remember if it's Oregon. I think it's a mixture of two. We'd like travel and do these like regional kind of shows. But then I think what really put us in that arena was when we filmed the music video for Airs Before Bullets, and that's
Hmm.
where I think Solid State found us, and they really
Okay.
liked what we were doing. And we, on top of that too, we were actually writing and had basically completed our first album, Saloon,
Hmm.
before Solid State even approached us. And I think that was like the winning ticket, was the fact that not only were they interested in us, they didn't have to do any work because the album was already finished. And so um that I think that's kind of
Sure.
why they pulled the trigger on us.
So did then they listen to it and go, okay, yeah, this is something we want to put out.
Oh, yeah, yeah, they didn't even
Yeah.
know that we had a new record. They were just like, "Hey, we really like you guys. Would you guys wanna talk?" You know? And we're like, "Yeah, not only that, we have a new record that's, like, basically done. It just needs to be mixed and mastered and stuff." And they're like, "Awesome. Well, that just helps seal the deal." So,
Yeah. Wow.
if any bands are looking for a good way to get your foot in the door, have an album ready before you, try to reach out. And that's the thing, is that we never sent any, emails or demos to any labels. We always felt like we would either just do it DIY and
Mhm.
maybe someone would find us, and if they didn't, we would just keep doing things DIY. And I think that's a lot of times how labels look at bands, is they wanna see the inner effort that a band is putting in, opposed to like a band expecting to get signed to then have a label for some reason do everything for them, which is totally not how labels really work these days.
I was
So
gonna say the whole game has changed now.
completely different. Like and it was changing a lot at that time too. And I think we were just a band that was very do it yourself mentality, and they just liked that whole idea.
Right. Because they have to do less work. They're like, oh, what these guys are doing is
Yeah,
working and we like what they're doing. So we can help them out with some funding or whatever, getting their name around more. But you've already proven that you can build a fan base and record great music and do all these things despite them.
exactly.
With that second album, homemade, you made all these instruments out of a tree that you guys chopped down. Tell me about this.
Yeah, with that one, yeah,
It
we were
just blows my mind. I listened to it. I'm like, how are you getting these ripping guitar solos out of something that you
well,
built out of
I
a
mean,
tree?
you have to keep in mind some of that stuff, like especially the guitars, they were built, but they weren't built like we didn't build the necks on the guitars.
Right, just the bodies though, right?
Yeah, but like I would say the guitars were actually the easiest part. Um, it was the drums that were tough, because the guitars, you just take any shape you want. You just buy a template online and you just cut it out to what you want, and then just do the math on where you got to put the pickups. And then it wasn't like super hard. You can just watch some YouTube tutorials. The
Mhm.
drums, though, we had no idea how to do it because we had never seen any tutorials on how to cut down a tree and then dry. Like the hardest part about that whole thing was drying the wood. We had no idea that we were going to run into that issue. And we kind of just presented this idea to Solid State as a joke. And they were like, no, you guys got to do that now. That's the coolest thing we've ever heard of. You have to
Mhm.
do it. And I'm like, oh man, I don't think I put myself in a good situation. I'm going to really be kicking myself in about a few months when I realize how hard this is going to be. And it
Yeah.
was. So the
They're
hardest
like, "What? How's that album coming?" You're like, "We're still building the drums,
that
man."
that was the thing. We had to I think we wanted to get the album done, like, by December of
Uh-huh.
2014, and it ended up not getting done till May of 2015. So, it was, like, 6 months of delays because we had to either focus on the building or we had to focus on the writing, and it
Mhm.
was hard to do, and then recording, like, we were doing everything, and it was like, we can't really record anything until the drums are finished, so it was, like, all of this weird, like, demoing, trying to present something so the label knew we're actually writing music, but then also trying to finish the instruments so that we could write, or sorry, so we could record everything.
Or yeah.
It was a nightmare. And the biggest hiccup we had was the drying of the wood, because when you cut down a tree, it's just very moist. Like trees are living, things. And so, usually when a tree gets cut down, it sits to dry out for 1 to 5 years. And it's like, how do you speed that process up? We had no idea. So we kind of thought, hey, what if we microwaved all of the pieces of wood that we were cutting for the drum set? And we did some research on how microwaves work. They vibrate moisture. It was basically how it happens until it becomes like hot. That's why you put water in the microwave and it starts to get hot. It's because it's actually like vibrating at such a high frequency. So we were like, well, maybe
Wow,
we
I
can.
didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's how it works. It's just vibrating molecules basically at a very high rate that it creates friction. And so that's, I mean, and there's a lot of things about microwaves. Like people complain about plastic and microwaves. Like it's not as dangerous as some people might think. Because
Mhm.
you're not actually like melting anything. There's nothing. It's not heat. It's actual vibration. So if something doesn't have anything to vibrate, it's not going to do it. It's just going to be like a loose thing. There's nothing there but water molecules are very, very, so everything has water in it.
Mhm.
Plastic doesn't have water in it though. But that's why you like you put like a burrito and half of it is super hot
Wet.
and then some of it's super cold, or it starts to get,
Yeah.
it's just, it's all water molecules, and it's just how you heat it correctly. So with the wood, what it was doing was, yeah, it was heating the wood from the inside out, and it was crazy. So you'd put them, you put the wood in for like 6 minutes, it'd be steaming. Um, you let it sit, be very hot. You don't want it to start on fire, and it would start on fire if we left it in the microwave too long. We just let it sit, let it cool down, and then put it back in the microwave for another 6 minutes. And my brother came up with like a calculate. My brother's very smart. Kyle is very smart at math. He's going to school to be like a math teacher or something, but he figured out some weird calculus where he could take the size of the wood and figure out what weight that wood had to be for the wood to be dry enough to be at the dryness that you would buy like that same piece of wood at Home Depot. Because it's all about moisture levels. Like every piece of wood you buy at the store has a certain moisture level that it's at. So how
Mhm.
do you get that wood to be like good to use? Because if it's too moist, it will start to crack when it starts to harden, because you're putting so much stress on it when you put the whole drum set together. You don't want it to crack.
Right.
It's too dry, it will also crack because it's too dry. So you have to find that perfect middle ground. So he figured out a formula of how to put all those different weights together. And so we would sit there, microwave the wood, and then I literally have a scale right here. It was this UPS scale that I found, and we would just put the wood on here and it would weigh it, and we would just figure out the grams or the ounces that Kyle had come up with with his calculus stuff. And we would just sit there all day microwaving wood, because there's literally like, I think the bass drum alone had 50 pieces of wood, and you put them into a trapezoid piece, and it's called stave or stav drum set build, and it
Mhm.
becomes like a puzzle piece, and then you basically put them all together and it creates a circle. And so there's like 50 pieces we had the microwave just for the bass drum. Took so long. And then we
I
had
was wondering about that. Like, you must have had to chop the wood pretty small to get it into the
yeah,
microwave.
the bass drum was like the biggest one, and it was like the biggest that the microwave was, which was like 24 inches or 22 inches or something, right?
Mhm.
So maybe it was 18 inches. I don't remember, but that was, it barely fit. We were very lucky on that. It just all kind of worked out perfectly, but it was very, very long and tedious. And I I would do it again because I know how to do it now, but it just takes forever.
Yeah, that's so cool though. What a great that's such a great idea. I mean, I was reading about that. I'm like trying to figure out, I'm listening to it. I'm like, how would they even do that? And then what you guys just decided, okay, was the tree on the cover the one that you cut down, or that was just an image?
No, that tree was huge. Like,
It looked massive. I was like, okay, they can build a whole band out of this easy.
build a whole house out of that tree. That tree was a standalone tree that's like kind of like 2 miles from our house in this big field. And it used to be a spot where like lots of people would sell drugs. It was like the drug meetup place. And
The
so
drug tree?
Yeah, it was like the drug tree.
Like
And
drive out to the tree. We'll all be
yeah,
hanging out
no,
there.
literally, it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere where like there wasn't a lot of traffic and stuff. But yeah, we just wanted to show something like
Yeah.
that. But no,
Yeah, the imagery, sure. Yeah, I
yeah,
wasn't sure if that was the actual one. I was like, wow, that's a big that probably took half a day just to cut the tree down.
it would have taken forever. Yeah, no, the tree we cut down was just like in a just another part of our area that was just in kind of an area where like a lot of Christmas trees, I think, are cut down from. So
Got it.
yeah.
Okay. So with this new album, it's all of the songs are all based off older songs, and then it's again. Can you tell me about this?
Yeah. So I I didn't know what the idea of again was gonna be. We started writing this like back in 2009, like the end of 2019, early 2020 was when we started coming back together as a band and writing again. And we spent a lot of time writing our song "Feel Again," which took like a long time. We were just trying to. We weren't working all the time. We were coming over like once a week and just kind of bullshitting and hanging out and having fun. And it took us like 5 months to write that song, and at the time, we were just like, "Well, let's just do a single," but then it started to come into, like, an album idea, like, the label was interested in it being an album, and so we're like, "Okay, let's start writing, like, a legit record," and I still had no idea what we're gonna do for, like, an actual album concept, and
Right.
what I ended up doing was just because I do this a lot, but this time I really wanted to do it, I went back into all my old sessions on Pro Tools from, like, my old computer that had Saloon and Handmade and Places on it still, and I was just going through it and kind of, like, picking apart a lot of our songs and even going into old demo tracks of old Skeleton songs that we didn't end up using. Because usually when we write a record, we have, like, 30 different skeletons, and some of them just get thrown out instantly because 'cause they're just not the vibe, or they
Mhm.
some of them grow to be, like, an actual, wholesome song, um, and, anyways, we just don't use them. So I was going through a lot of this old stuff and I started to try to get the vibe that we were in at the time. I really wanted to make sure our fans, felt the OG ongoing concept in this new album opposed to something so brand new that it didn't feel like our old band anymore, especially with
Mhm.
guys coming back. And so through a lot of that, I was like, still writing our new record, but sh- having issues with trying to find like phrasing or lyrics or melody stuff to it. And I remember one time when I was going through the sessions of the song Unwanted, and I was trying to work on one of our new songs, which now is Unwanted Again. I remember trying to think of like, how can I do a cool melody? And I was listening to the old song and I was like, man, would it be cool if I like did, I wanna fall in love. I wanna fall in love with you. That kind of like run. And I was like, but use those lyrics. Oh, that could work. I mean, that could be a callback to that song. And
Mhm.
over time, it started to be like I would be going on other sessions and be like, "Oh, this would be really cool to add like this phrasing to Melody Again, the new song I'm writing right now." And after a while, I was like, "It would be really cool if we just did all callbacks." And on top of that, our band was constantly, the the word again came in conversation a lot because we'd always be like, "It's so sick to be writing again. It's so cool to be back, working to get together again." And it just felt so right that we're going back in time in a way, calling back some of these old songs, doing like part twos of them, I guess you could say. And they're not reimagined, they're not covers, they're completely new songs,
Mhm.
but they're bringing back in a way that just makes you kinda wanna go back and listen to the first version and see how that one so, that's kinda where the idea came from, and, I mean, not I think all the songs have references to all the old songs, but there are some songs that have more callbacks than others. Some have hardly anything, and they're just almost a brand new song with the title of an older song, but, yeah, it just kind of became what it is. I wasn't really, like, any epiphany, it was just kinda more at the end of the day, we just were like, "Man, the word again just seems so fitting for everything we're doing."
That's cool. Yeah, it when I first saw it, I was wondering if it was just like reimagined versions of the old ones, and I'm like, "Oh no, this isn't the same song
I think a lot
whatsoever."
of people think that, and I'm trying really hard to use the right verbiage to make sure people know that they're not covers. Luckily, though, we've really I've only really had a few people think that they're reimagined, and I usually will see it on, like, a YouTube comment or, like, a Reddit comment somewhere, and usually someone will instantly reply and be like, "No, these are not reimagined or covers, these are brand new songs." So they're just helping us out, answer
That's
those.
great. Yeah.
It's
Eh,
cool that our fans are, like, really into what we do and know that these are, like, it's a brand new album, brand new songs, but because we are the ongoing concept, we're always gonna add something that breaks the fourth wall in one way or another.
right, right. Yeah, 'cause well, right away when you listen to the songs, the first lyrics, it's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this isn't the same thing whatsoever."
Yeah,
Right? I mean, it's not like you're using the same first phrase of the song, like "Amends," like, that was like, when I first heard that one, I'm like, "Okay, like, this doesn't sound the same whatsoever in the beginning," and then it's, okay, it's totally different because the first version has that kinda, like, uppity intro, like, the vocal part, and then the lyrics right off the bat aren't the same, so you're like, "Okay, this is different." So that when I was listening to the record, I was going back and checking out some of the old ones. I'm like, "Okay, it doesn't sound like any of these whatsoever are, the same."
yeah, and I feel like it's not something that's brand new either. Like Periphery, I think just came out with a record and a song that I listened to, and they had like three callbacks to three songs from their past albums. And I remember everyone being like, "Oh, it's so cool that Periphery is doing all these callbacks to some of their older songs." So it's not something that's like a new concept. And Dream Theater used to do this stuff all the time. They would have a really like iconic riff that they would have in some of their albums, and then, like, 3 albums later, all of a sudden, they just pop that riff right back in, and it'd be, like, such a throwback to the old thing, and you'd be like, "That's so sick." So then all of a sudden, you're like, you're finding yourself going back to listening to that song just because you heard it in their new album, and that was kinda the thing too, is I figured since we're on hiatus for so long, a lot of people that will become fans of us will not know our old music, and so I feel like this was kind of a passive way of making new fans kind of have a reason to go back and listen to some of our older music. Uh,
Mhm.
because it's like, that's a really cool song from Again. I want to hear what like the original Unwanted song sounded like. So it's kind of just I figured it was a good marketing tactic at the same time.
No, definitely, for sure, because it got me listening to the old songs to see if they were the same thing or not. Like, "Oh, I don't remember this one." Going back, listening, "Okay, yeah, it's not the same thing." Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a brilliant brilliant concept. So you guys were on hiatus, and then was there something that made you all decide, "Hey, let's just do this again. Let's get back together and do this."
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of miscommunication that happened when the guys originally left, and, like, I think everyone just needed to grow up a little bit. Living with your brothers in the same house for 18 years and then basically not even
Living on the road with them or what?
yeah,
Yeah.
not even moving out. Like, none of us had even moved out when we started touring full time, so we were still, like, living in the same house and getting into a 15-passenger van and living in closer quarters while on the road. It's very stressful, like,
Mhm.
it's not exactly financially fun, all of that just kinda led to, I think, them wanting to just live life normally, and I totally understand where they're coming from. I lived and breathed the band for so long, and I think uh it was a little bit hard on my mental health, I think, at some point, and I think a lot of bands struggle with that in the sense that, like, when you don't know anything else but your band, you constantly wake up every morning thinking, "How do I stay relevant? How am I gonna, you know, keep our fans? How am I gonna get on, like, a big tour that will, like, financially make us money?" It's, like, the worst place to possibly be, and I think my brothers were over it, and they just wanted to work a standard job. Parker wanted to just go to school, do his thing. TJ just wanted to work a normal job, and I think that that time apart from all of them and just them doing their own thing and me doing my own thing, because I ended up finding a really good job in the mental health field, which I'm very passionate about myself now.
Mhm.
And that was a huge thing because now for me, the band isn't the only thing that matters. It's all my other things that I have passions for now. And the band is just something that is like a big hobby slash passion, but it's not the only thing that defines who I am. And I think Parker and Kyle and TJ all found that same thing themselves. So when it came to coming back together, it was us hanging out as friends rather than like business partners and just enjoying each other's company. And there's like a whole year, 2018, 2019, maybe even close to 2020, where Kyle and I would just play pool like every day. He bought a pool table, like a really nice old like 1930s, 40s like slate pool table, and we just
Wow.
started playing pool like every single day and got really close, just playing all the time. And that was when we started to be like, it'd be really fun to maybe just start writing again. Like, what do we have to lose? Like, our band's not doing anything, been on hiatus for a few years, and then COVID hit, of course. And so, with us, we were hanging out more often than not because like there wasn't, traveling wasn't really as big of a thing, and we all lived in the same area, so we just go over to each other's houses and hang out and stuff. And that kind of just started the ideas. And then I think one day I was like, why don't we just come over to my house and we'll open up Pro Tools and see what we can come up with. And yeah, it just kind of happened organically. There was no forceful asking, there was no sit down conversation. It was more just like kind of in passing, like, why don't we see what happens? And that's where it kind of started. And we're talking
Wow.
late 2019, early 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you guys put this record together. Are you doing a tour to support it, or is that something that
We're
you
doing
kind of
like a
like?
small little like 3-day run this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, just kind of
Okay.
Spokane, Portland, and Boise, Idaho. So it's nothing too big. We do have another tour coming up at the end of June with Lightworker and Bloodlines. That's like going to audio feed, so it's like a week and a half long run. But we don't have anything like we used to do, where it's like a 6-week long tour.
Right. Yeah. I bet
Not
that could get draining.
It's draining, and like it's not realistic. Like Kyle has 2 kids now. Parker's getting married in July. I'm married now. Andy has 2 kids. And TJ is, he had brain surgery last year, which was very scary.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, they thought he had like a brain tumor, like a cancerous thing. It ended up being a very rare form of autoimmune disease. There's only like 100 people or 200 people that have ever been documented with having what he has. So he's kind of like a brain study because they don't know what the heck he has and how people get it or what causes it. So he's not really able to tour a whole lot either because it's like he has to go in and get tested a lot of times. And
Yeah, I bet. He's
and
gotta
it's
probably be monitored and, yeah, checked out quite often.
and the band doesn't make enough money for him to quit his or to stop working for 6 weeks. Like, he's in a good position at his job and he wouldn't be able to take 6 weeks off, and he needs the insurance from his company to keep doing all the stuff he's doing. So it's not realistic for him to leave at all,
Right.
more than like a couple weeks at the most. So our touring lifestyle that we used to do is not realistic, and I think a lot of bands have been transitioning to that. I don't think like there's bands out there that are still doing it. Like, I'm just thinking of, like, a band like Dayseeker or Fit for a King. Like, they're doing stuff that are like 6 weeks, 2 months long tours, but they're at a level now where they're making enough money that it all makes sense. But a lot of bands just one tier down, are you just don't make nearly as much money as you would just working a standard job. So you gotta find a happy middle ground with it all.
Mhm. For sure. No, yeah, I can't imagine having to I have lots of friends in bands that are touring constantly, and I just am like, "Oh my gosh," like, it's cool that you get to go over the whole, country and the world and all these cool things, but, like, I just get exhausted talking to them when they get when they come through Nashville or whatever. I'm like, "How are
Yeah.
you?" Like, "Oh, man," like, it
Well,
just seems so brutal.
they never, you everyone always says, "Oh, it's so fun. You get to go to all these different cities and all these different places." Nah, you never do. You rarely, because you spend the whole time traveling to that city, and then by the time
Uh-huh.
you're there, you're either very tired because you've been driving all night and you sleep in your van or do something, or you just go to the nearest coffee shop just to get Wi-Fi to work on social
So
media or do whatever you
yeah.
like. The only time I see bands actually having fun on tour are like when they're in tour bus level, where like the tour guy can travel to the destination and then they sleep the whole time in their bunks, and then they wake up, in downtown, Nashville, and they're like, "Oh, let's go explore Nashville." Like, that's the only time that it makes sense. But a lot of these guys, when they're still in the 15 passenger van state or the Sprinter van state, nah, they're so done. They just want to
Oh,
go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Even, like, yeah, even the smaller, buses or trailers or whatever, and, like, unless you have an off day, right? I mean, you won't have a whole lot of time. You gotta get there, sound check, then get everything else that comes along with it. Then you're like, "Okay, now it's time to leave, go to the next city."
And off days are kind of not even fun either, because an off day means you're not making money. So everything that you're
Ah, good
off day,
point.
money that you're just wasting. And so oftentimes on our off day, like our perfect tour that we would do would be like 30 days, 29 shows, 1 day off. Like that
Oh
was
man.
literally how our tours were set up, because every single day you're losing money that you're not playing. So, and on that 1 day off, all we would do was we would just sleep and do
Yeah. Recharge all
yeah,
day.
just recharge. We do it usually halfway through the tour to like rest our vocals and whatever. But that day would fly by because we're just sleeping the whole time. So yeah, the off days are not for like tourism in any sort of way, but
Yeah.
at least for us, they weren't. Yeah.
That's wild, man. Well, I appreciate you hanging out with me today, Dawson. This has been a lot of fun, and
Yeah, dude.
I
For
think the
sure.
new record's awesome. And I have one more quick question. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
I think that the biggest advice that I can give, and it's hard one because I feel like some people might not understand. Okay. I think that the biggest thing is people are constantly trying to be something else. They have a hard time finding their own identity. I don't know how you I don't know how you find your own identity. I found mine. I just write what I like to write. I do what I like to do. I don't really look at someone and copy what they're doing 100%. And I think that especially these days, and we've written songs about it, it's like being original and trying to find like your own person, whether it's how you play your guitar, how you sing. I think a lot of people will try to sing like their favorite vocalist. If they're a girl, they'll try to sing like Haley Williams or Ariana Grande or something. Or if they're a guy, they try to sing like I'm just making up some shit right now, but uh
The
I think
Biebs?
nah,
I'm
maybe
just kidding.
no, I mean, people copy his flow. A lot
Yeah,
of
no, I know
people
what you're saying. You try to
oh,
emulate your
yeah.
idols.
A lot of people try to copy Post Malone actually with like his vibrato and stuff. They'll do
Ah,
like that false, like really fast vibrato, and it's like kind of cringy when I hear people do that, 'cause it's like it's not you. Like I know that you
right.
don't sing like that. You're just trying to sound like that. So I don't know. I always tell people like try to find who you are and what you really are comfortable with. And if you think it's weird and it sounds different, well, that's actually probably a good thing. Like people want to hear something different. They don't want to hear, Post Malone 2.0. They want to hear you and who you are and what you bring to the table. So I don't know. I guess it sounds a little bit narcissistic though, because it's like I can't really explain how to do that. And when I say that I've found it, I just come across as being egotistical. But I believe that I've found it, and I really like the things I do.
Bringing it back.